Hello, everyone. Welcome to another ConCensis Technologies podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Litwin, the voice of B2B. And folks, thanks so much for joining us on another conversation here with ConCensis Technologies. As we maneuver today's topic, make sure that you're heading to our website, www.censis.com. Again, ConCensis, CenSIS.com for more information on some of the main touch points we're going to be breaking down today, but also for some more ConCensis content, including episodes of our conversations here on the podcast, as well as other videos, articles, blogs, and more. So as we maneuver today's episode of the show, the core topic is digging into some of the workflows, challenges, and solutions to one of healthcare's biggest legacy pain points, and that would be the use of IUSS, otherwise known as Immediate Use Steam Sterilization, or for our legacy listeners, flash sterilization. Though IUSS as a process has improved in its efficiency and efficacy over the years, an active fight within professional healthcare culture against IUSS has left it in a bit of a gray area. People are asking themselves, does this process actually have any utility in modern care environments, especially in the context of broader pushes toward value-based care, for example? And if hospitals feel the need to use IUSS for their medical equipment, how do you make sure it's being used intentionally instead of as a Band-Aid solution, and often a pretty poor one at that? So we're going to be exploring all of that and more, as well as how ConCensis Technologies fits into the equation to support care professionals' workflows. So here to join us for insights today, I'm pleased to welcome our thought leader, Kelly Swails. She's Senior Clinical Educator for ConCensis and a frequent guest on the program. Kelly, great to have you on. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Real pleasure getting to chat. I know on your last conversation, you spoke with Tyler, and that was a great conversation. So looking forward to getting the chance to source your thought leadership as well. I want to start by letting our audience know what your experience has been in the field using or seeing IUSS used, just so our audience understands the perspective you're bringing today.
Yeah. I used to be a scrub tech. So back then we would flash anything and everything that we needed to in an open flash pan. So that tells you how long ago that was. But, through the years, they came out with these flash packs. It was great. We could use, the sealed container to flash, as we called it back then. And that was okay. And then came the move to, let's not sterilize in that way. And then changed the name to Immediate Use Steam Sterilization. So that was, tell everybody, as much as I try to say IUSS, I know that I will slip and say flash because that's old school and, well, that's what I said for how many years. You're a legacy player. Yeah, there you go. And so, it's become a patient safety issue. I think that one of the greatest concerns, at least what I have with it, is, are those instruments getting clean? Are they hand washing them, or are they putting them through the ultrasonic like they should, putting them through the mechanical washer like they should, and then sterilizing? And so, I go to hospitals, about 60 to 75 hospitals a year. I go on site and I do clinical assessments to see how our customers are using CensiTrac. I then help them, to figure out ways that they can use it to its full capabilities, or maybe a more efficient way to use it for something that they're doing. If they're doing something on paper, I can usually show them how we can do this in CensiTrac and get away from paper and go completely electronic. And I am still seeing quite a few hospitals that are doing IUSS. It may be, we only do it once a month, and I see some that it's 25% of their sets that they process are IUSS on any given day.
So for a quick refresher for our audience on how IUSS differs from some other sterilization methods, IUSS used to be called flash sterilization because, put simply, it is the sterilization workflow that requires the absolute minimum time to sterilize surgical equipment without a dry time. So for comparison, this looks like usually a 3 to 4 minute sterilization with 0 dry time. In comparison, other sterilizing workflows can run anywhere from maybe 5 minutes with a 30-minute dry time, or even 10 minutes with a 45-minute dry time. So Kelly, I'm curious, what has been the trend over the last several years regarding IUSS? Just in general, have you seen it decrease, increase, or maybe just level out across professional institutions, especially as the context of using it, like we mentioned earlier, has been shifting more towards the negative or don't even do this at all side?
Yep. So I am seeing a great decrease, which is wonderful. This is what we want to see. I go to many hospitals that say, we don't flash at all. I worked at hospitals that they don't flash at all, and I'm hearing we haven't flashed in 2 years. We haven't flashed in 4 years or something. So it can be done. I think it's just these hospitals have had a strict policy to say we're not going to do it no matter what. One of the key things with that is never have only one set of something. And, if it's during the procedure and something gets contaminated, well, good thing with SensorTrack is you can look up that instrument and see where else it's used and then go grab that tray off the shelf. So you may not even think that this retractor would be in another tray, but yet it is.
And just to intersect some high-level trends before we get more granular on IUSS, have there been any intersections between that decrease in IUSS workflows and the sort of broader push we've seen over the last several years towards value-based care at care organizations?
So I know, if you use a IUSS instrument or set on a patient, it is supposed to be documented. Now, are they documenting that in the patient's chart? Are they documenting that in SensorTrack? Where are they documenting this? And along with that, then you have to think, if there's an infection, if that patient gets an infection, is it in their chart that they, had an IUSS instrument used on them, or are they documenting it but not linking it? So there's a lot of gray area there to know, when it comes to value-based care, to know exactly how they're charting that, how they're documenting that. That's one of the benefits. I think of my mom had surgery a few years ago, and right there in pre-op, I was with her, and I said, don't use any IUSS instruments on her. And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, flash instruments, IUSS. I said, you can't. I said, so I need to know before she goes back there that her instruments that are ready in that OR, that they were processed, as they should be, and nothing was flashed. And they're like, nope, it's fine. I'm like, okay. And she was okay, but as they say, customers and consumers, they're getting smarter. They know what to ask for. They know what to be cautious of. And you look at, if you have a hospital-acquired infection, many people are going to say, I want to see what sets were used. I want to see, the records, or I want to see the hospital room I was in. Was it clean? So kind of have to do all you can to protect your patients.
Now, if you could get a little more granular for us. Earlier, again, I mentioned some of the differences in sterilization time and dry time between some common workflows. Can you intersect that with how the quality of IUSS compares to other common care industry sterilization methods? It seems like in the context of our conversation, it doesn't compare very well, but I'd like to just offer those more granular details for our audience.
Yeah, so I think of, back in the day, a long time ago, before flash was an issue, we would hand wash our instruments at the sink, and then we would flash them. And I didn't know any better because that's the way I was taught during my clinicals, and that's what I went along with. And then as things progress and you learn more, it's like, oh my goodness. One of my main concerns is that if you are, processing something through IUSS, is how well did you clean that? Did it go through the ultrasonic like it's supposed to? Did it go through the mechanical washer like it's supposed to? And then as it comes out, typically it's too hot to touch. So you've got to cool it, let it cool somehow so you can assemble it quick and then put it in for that 4-minute sterilization. Many times you see it's like a 270, 4-minute exposure time and 1-minute dry time, and then off to the OR it goes. And, you just feel like some of those steps before that sterilization, are they completing all those steps, or are they rushing it through, or are they putting it in the washer, the mechanical washer, are they putting it on a short cycle? So that's what concerns me more than anything, is that instrument truly clean and going through that cleanliness part.
So today, even the AAMI, the Association for the Advancement of Medical Instrumentation, even they support minimal use of IUSS, if not a complete departure from the process, even if medical professionals feel that they don't have enough equipment to meet their daily demand. So what would you say are some of the core reasons that we still see medical professionals use IUSS if it's widely regarded as inefficient? And as you break those down, if you could also give us some context on if you see any of these reasons as justified reasons or not, and why.
Yep. So I think two of the main reasons that I see, one, it's loaner sets. So they arrive too late, or we don't have time, or they only bring in one. So they may bring in 12 trays, but they're all different trays. And then as you go to set up and prepare for that surgery, if they forgot a chemical integrator, or there's something, dirty in that set, there's something wrong, it now needs to be reprocessed. Well, we don't have time. You've got that tight schedule. So then you're having to go and IUSS that process, so that way we don't hold up the surgery schedule too long. The other thing I see is not enough instruments. And, there I can speak from experience where at, one of the hospitals I worked at, I looked at our IUSS and, figuring out, okay, why are our rates so high? What are we doing? And it was our rectal tray. And we were doing 12 procedures in a day. They were quick procedures, and we only had 5 trays. So there was, not enough time to turn all those over and get them back. And so I looked at those patterns and those trends, found out here's one. It was a simple, it's easy to buy instruments for that. And then it was I added 5 more sets, and then never had to IUSS one of those. It can be done. I know there's budgets. Mine was an easy fix because they were very reasonably priced instruments, not a $25,000 instrument or something. But so yeah, it's just a matter of looking to see either upholding loaner policies. Many times I see that hospitals will require them to bring in 2 of everything, and then so they have a backup, but then they don't really hold them to it. And then yes, they're going to have to IUSS that set if there's something wrong with it.
So when, at least in today's context, right, when professionals still feel the need to use IUSS, since it is a spottier sterilization process, the AAMI also says that if you have to do this, then trays used for said flash sterilization need to be identified and documented as having been flash sterilized, as having gone through that IUSS process. So does that documentation and logging process happen like it should in your experience when folks still use IUSS? Why or why not?
So that I don't know, because I would assume that they're documenting that in the patient's chart, and I don't see patient's charts. I would hope that that's where they're documenting it. Now, if they're documenting it in CensiTrac, that's how they're in sterile processing. That would be an ideal way for them to document that load as an IUSS. And then from there, they can start running, monthly, quarterly, yearly reports, look for those patterns and trends. And that's where they're going to get that good documentation to identify what is the problem. If it's this one tray, in the last 6 months, we've had a hole in the wrapper 5 times. Well, that's telling me that we need to use corner protectors, put it in a rigid container, something. So the whole idea of using CensiTrac for that IUSS is that you can identify those patterns and trends and then minimize that use. And that's what, I've done this at a hospital, and it worked. We were at 480 some flashes a year, and we were down to 23 a year when I left. And then last I heard, they're at 0. They don't do it at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty telling there of the impact of a logging platform and documentation platform like ConCensis. Let's go ahead and get a little deeper now in that and intersect ConCensis into the conversation more explicitly. What I find interesting about ConCensis's solution to support IUSS workflows is that it doesn't necessarily, on its face, find ways to eliminate IUSS, but it tries to give care professionals more holistic oversight over their processes to identify those gaps and then make the right decisions for their care context, which usually ends up leading to, like you said, phasing out IUSS. But it really tries to just give care professionals the right tools to understand what are our workflows, what is missing, what is failing, and what do we need to invest in to fill those gaps. So I'm wondering if you could get a little more detailed on how ConCensis Technologies is CensiTrack, like you were saying. Again, that's the platform we're talking about today, how that connects with this care industry dynamic.
Yep. So one thing, so with CensiTrack, there's multiple ways. You can run a report, identify what sets you only have one of. And then you can identify, how often is that set used. You can then also run a report showing usage. So it's going to show you your sets that are used the most, and then how many, on any given day. So if you see something that's used twice in a day, that's definitely something you may want to increase how many sets you have. And then, as I mentioned, if you're documenting those IUSS, then running those reports and filtering from there to figure out, which sets are we using or having to, IUSS. You can use case tracking, which then you can use that patient or that procedure, that case ID, and then you can link that IUSS to that case ID. So then in the event, you have a root cause analysis or a tracer, as part of that RCA, they may ask you, what sets were used on this patient, for any of them IUSS. You have all the information right there with case tracking, by putting in that procedure, that case ID.
You brought this up in passing, but I'd like to give you a chance to break it down with a little more detail. I know that you've used CensiTrack as a customer as well. You've got hands-on experience with how it fits into and supports some of these existing sterilization workflows. So can you share some of those experiences with us and what the key takeaways were for you using it as an end user, what you found useful about the platform?
Yeah, so when you're going to document you create your sterilizer load, and then when you go to document it, typically you'll select, pre-vac 270, 10 and 45 or something, but you want to select the IUSS and then put in the, 274 and 1 or whatever cycle you ran it on. And then from there, because you're using those IUSS, that's then when you can run reports just strictly on IUSS. That's what I did. And then when I had that report, I just exported to an Excel, and then just with filters and formulas, you can find out different things that you want to, especially holes in wrappers. That was always a useful one. There I also use the quality feedback. So anytime you had a hole in the wrapper too, documenting with that. So then you can help to identify and be proactive so that you don't have to use IUSS if you're using the quality feedback to identify issues or concerns.
Kelly, I appreciate all your insights so far. This has been really useful. I've got one more core question for you here before I open it up to some final thoughts. But how do you see CensiTrack supporting care professionals and actually creating some domino effects, right, for the entire care operation, especially as we come out of today's industry dynamics and look ahead at tomorrow's?
Yep. So as I said, I go to 60 to 75 facilities a year, and I'm continually seeing that everyone is short-staffed. Many departments are struggling, and I was recently at a department, and they're down 25 staff. So, a large department, but you think of, there's a demand for sterile processing workers. And so if we can do anything we can to help them so that they're not having to rush, they're not having this, hurry, because I need to IUSS this set or this instrument, then what a great way to do it. If you have to just IUSS something, is that just the Band-Aid effect? Well, let's solve this. Let's get this taken care of. Or if it's loaner sets that are arriving too late, then we need someone to uphold that loaner policy. And you can then use that CensiTrack report and show them exactly how we had to flash this. I told you I'd say flash. We had to IUSS this, and this, this set of yours and this set of yours, and there's a discussion with that rep to say you've got to get your stuff here on time. So anything we can do to help staffing with the shortage, so that they're not having to, run around like crazy and be stressed out.
Definitely, and it feels like those trends are going to persist for at least a while as the industry figures out the best way to address some of the retention issues that we see in care professionals. So I think investments in platforms like these to help make existing workflows more efficient and to identify where you need to invest in more equipment, for example, to reduce the need for ever needing to flash sterilize anything in the first place, I think is going to be creating some domino effects as well. So Kelly, last thing is just final thoughts here on the platform or on some of these challenges impacting professionals moving forward.
I also our customers use SensorTrack. Just, you have it. It's there. Use it for your IUSS loads. Many times I hear, yes, but the OR, they're the ones that they do their own IUSS loads. They do it all their own. Well, if they're doing all their own, then that really makes me question, is that set being washed? Because if you don't know that what they're flashing, or, because it's upstairs in the OR, then how is that being washed when the washer's downstairs? So right there would be a big no-no, that if it's just being hand washed. And so I encourage everyone to have that conversation with your OR and say, let's not have the OR flash anything anymore. Have sterile processing do it. We'll get it downstairs. We'll put it through the washer, and then we'll process it so we can document it in SensorTrack. And then it becomes a win-win for everyone, because I'm sure most facilities would rather have enough instruments than having to IUSS. And yes, it costs money, but it's patient care, it's best practice, it's patient safety, it's our staffing, it's our doctors. Let's minimize the stress for them and the having to rush and get things done.
All right, Kelly Swails, thank you so much for your insights today. I really appreciate you helping us break down why IUSS workflows have been changing over the last several years, why care professionals have been moving away from using them, doing some compare and contrast for us, and of course getting into the nitty-gritty for how they impact operations and how Censis Technologies and SensorTrack are supporting that transition away from flash sterilization. So thank you again to our guest, Kelly Swails, Senior Clinical Educator for Censis Technologies. And Kelly, if folks want to find out a little bit more about SensorTrack, about some of your research and your clinical education, or they just want to get in touch with the company, how can they do so?
Yeah, so they can reach out to, as you said, go to census.com, click on there. There's all the information to contact our office. If anyone is certified or they just want to further their education, on the website you can click on professional education, and then right there you'll see a bunch of different CE opportunities, whether it's an on-demand webinar or an article. Read the article, answer the questions. Along with that, lots of helpful hints out there in the sterile processing world, as well as just department dynamics and leadership. So lots of useful things on our website, as well as that contact information. You can always call our service desk, and then they'll get you in contact with the correct person. And Daniel, thank you for allowing me to talk to you about IUSS and share everything with our viewers.
Absolutely. Kelly, thank you so much for your time. It's really been a pleasure getting to chat today, and I'm sure we'll have you back on the podcast very soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
And thank you everyone for watching this Censis Technologies podcast and conversation. If you like the thought leadership you heard and saw today, and you'd like some previous episodes, or you want to make sure you don't miss out on future ones, make sure that you are heading to our website, censis.com. Again, CENSIS.com. I'm your host, Daniel Litwin, the voice of B2B, and we'll catch you on the very next Censis Technologies conversation.